Hey, folks, if you want early access to episodes as they drop, click that subscribe button, join us, and together we'll fix the broken U.S. healthcare system. We'll see you on the next one.
Get ready to take control of your healthcare. Here's your host, Ray Cobra.
And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Broken Healthcare. My name is Ray Cobra. I am your host, and I'm delighted to have with us a, shall we say, a three-dimensional personality in the studio today. I am with Randy Otto, who is a financial advisor, an incredible dude, an artist, also probably, I don't know about the world, but let's just say the world's greatest Winston Churchill persona, shall we say, that I've ever come across. And I really think you're going to enjoy this. This is a man of many talents. Welcome to the big show, Andy.
Thanks to be here. Appreciate it.
Or am I talking to Sir Winston Churchill?
It depends on who you address. If you'd like Winston, you can have him.
Let's start there, Mr. Churchill.
Very good.
Mr. Prime Minister. So how did you come into this world?
I came into this world early. At least that's what they told me. My mother was riding a horse. Blenheim Palace, our family home, the Churchill family home. And the horse stumbled and it fell. My mother was rushed into the palace, and I came into the world. They told me I was early. If that's true, then it's the first and last time I was ever early for anything in my life. The good news is the horse survived.
The horse survived.
He did.
Amazing. I don't know too much about horses, being a Queens kid growing up in New York. Although there's plenty of farmland if you go out east on Long Island or you go upstate, plenty of folks have horses, but not being around them. But I do understand that if they break their leg, they have to be put down. They can't stand the stress of it. Luckily, that did not happen with you, Mr. Prime Minister.
But it's something that you might, your listeners might find of interest, and you especially. My mother was raised in Brooklyn. You may not know this, but she was American. My father was British, of course. Lord Randolph Churchill, politician, brilliant public speaker. My mother was American, born upstate in New York, and her father was one of the founders of the Pimlico racetrack, not too far from here, from what I understand.
Wow.
And Leonard, his name was Leonard Jerome. Perhaps you know him. No, of course not. That would be quite a while ago. But she had a real yearning for Brooklyn as a child, and I find it fascinating that I'm half American, because you see, I had relatives who fought on both sides of the Revolutionary War. You might say I am an English-speaking Union.
Fascinating. That's crazy. I did not know that about you, Prime Minister. I probably had learned and forgotten because I've taken the tour of the War Room and in London. And I thought, and I may be wrong, I'm not the best student of history, but I thought you were orphaned. That is not the case.
That is not the case. Well, my mother was much loved.
Okay.
And perhaps by a few too many, to be honest with you. And my father, of course, was very busy with politics. As a result, I didn't see them very much as a child, but the person who really had a major impact on me was Mrs. Elizabeth Ann Everest. She was my nurse.
I see.
And my brother's nurse. Did you know I had a brother?
I did not.
His name was Jack Churchill, 6 years younger than I, and Jack and I doted on, we called her Womb, or Womany. Womany. And what she did for me, because I was last in my class on a regular basis. You see, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I didn't want to study Latin. I'd write my name on the exam and hand it in blank and say, no one speaks it, no one writes it, no one cares about it, neither do I. As a result, I wound up with welts on my back from the canings the headmasters would administer. So Room dried my tears, and she salved my wounds, and she gave me the one thing that every child needs. She believed in me.
Huh.
He kept telling me I was going to be a great man someday, because you see, I had favorite subjects. I had English. I studied the English language. Sentence is a beautiful thing, and the history, of course, because my family had a good bit of it going back in time, and that carried me forward. But Mrs. Everest, when she died in 1895, I was but 20 years of age. She, my brother and I made sure that she was buried in a very prominent spot in London. You can still go there today because we maintain her grave in perpetuity. She meant that much to us.
Wow.
So the lesson to be learned there is, if you have children, believe in them. And either that or pay somebody to do it.
Wow, that's fascinating. I did not know that. And I think part of what draws me to you, Prime Minister, is your mastery of the English language, not only spoken but written. Some of the things that you've written are so beautifully written and eloquent. And I believe that that is a dying art in the 21st century. But it's not lost on me that you literally had a talent to write something that would move me emotionally. And I don't think I'm speaking just for myself. Going back, if you think about your upbringing, was that just something that you naturally gravitated to, or where did that come from?
Well, my great ancestor was John Churchill, first Duke of Marlborough. He, in his prime, was called upon to fight Louis XIV. Perhaps you don't remember it in history because it is European history, but Louis decided he wanted to take over all of Europe and made it as far as Blenheim, which is in Bavaria. And my great ancestor, John Churchill, first Duke of Marlborough, did something heretofore that had not been done on the continent. He organized all of the rest of the European countries, kingdoms, fiefdoms, a variety of different people, and marshaled them all in one place. He called it the Grand Alliance. And they went up against Louis XIV, and they defeated him on that battlefield on that day in 1704 was the date.
Was this the Cardinal Richelieu?
No, that was later on.
That was later.
That was Louis the 16th.
Ah, I see.
Yes, right, indeed. But you must understand that this man, John Churchill, never lost a battle. Kicked Louis back into France, and Queen Anne built a palace for him, which you can visit today. It's the second largest palace in Europe. Blenheim is an absolutely lovely place, and that's where my imagination began. I would build fortifications on our property, reenact the battle. I had over 1,500 toy soldiers.
Wow!
And my father, on a day he was there at our home, found me in the nursery. I had laid out all of the 1,500 soldiers in battle array. I'd recreated the Battle of Blenheim.
Wow!
And was playing along, and suddenly he cleared his throat. "So, Winston," he said, "a career in the military." Not wanting to displease him, I said, "Yes, Papa."
Wow!
"I'd like that very much." and my father said, "Very well, you're settled then." and turned on his heel and headed out of the room. Very substantial conversation, I'm sure you'd agree.
Oh, for sure.
But that set the tone for the future. I enrolled in Sandhurst Military Academy, passed the exam on the third try. You only get 3, and I passed it by the
Third time's the charm.
skin of my teeth, if you will. My father, unfortunately, died. I rose very nearly top of my class.
Wow.
Very, very proud of that. I had found a niche. I'd found what I wanted to do.
And how old are you at this time?
21.
21.
Yeah, 21. It was the year my father died. He died the same year as Mrs. Everest, 1895.
Wow.
And he never got a chance to see me. Therefore, I believed it was my destiny.
Yeah.
And that's a big word.
Sure.
It's a big part of who I am. I believed in my destiny was to serve with my father in Parliament, and it was dashed. And so, therefore, I sought out the most dangerous military situations because I wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted to get into politics. I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, and I felt that the military would be the logical place.
So is that what kind of launched your career, that desire to be a military guy? And does that bridge the gap from the time that you graduated to the time that you became prime minister? What happened in those years?
It's a long story. How much time do we have?
Well, how old were you when you became prime minister?
I was approximately 60.
60.
60.
So you lived a life before a life, if you will.
I was 40 years as a member of Parliament before I became prime minister.
And looking back, what were some of your proudest accomplishments serving Parliament?
Well, First Lord of the Admiralty in 1911. The fleet at that time was powered by coal-fired. And you Americans had invented an engine that ran on petrol, gasoline, whatever. And what we did was we converted the entire fleet and all of our new ships to that kind of propulsion. Didn't have to pull into port to fill it up with coal anymore. We could put bigger guns on it. As a result, the fleet was ready when we knew the Germans were making noise. And of course, in 1914, they had coal-fired ships, and we had the more up-to-date ships. I was very proud of that, that accomplishment. Going back in time, I became a member of Parliament at the age of 25 in 1900. And I lasted 4 years as a Tory, like my father before me. I fulfilled a dream, the Churchill name once again in Parliament. But in 1904, I had looked around and discovered that all of London, half of the population was below the poverty line. People were starving, no health care at all whatsoever. People were dying in the streets. The greatest country on earth. The sun never set on the British Empire.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you if this was the period where that was the case.
Very much so. We were preeminent.
Yeah.
We, like you Americans, after World War II. Yeah. We were everywhere. It was the empire, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I decided to change to the Liberal Party, Lloyd George, Asquith, those boys, and I, as a result, I was promoted. I got a number of different cabinet positions, and we were able to effect change. What we did was a combination between the private sector, businesses, all of those manufacturers, everyone, and the government. And we developed not only healthcare pensions for widows and orphans, those types of things, and things got better. Unfortunately, the system somewhat imploded in 1929 and into the 30s during the Great Depression. And then, from what I understand today, it is in dire straits. But that we could possibly hit on later, because I know you're interested in healthcare, aren't you?
Healthcare and finance very much. And that's curious to me because, I have friends that were born in other countries and they're very much interested in world politics. And I don't want to just speak for myself, but I think most Americans are very focused on what happens here, and they don't really keep an eye on the rest of the world, so to speak. I mean, yeah, you have CNN and you have global news and all of that stuff, but I think folks are very much focused on this kind of ecosystem, this world in America. But it's interesting to me that the Great Depression affected Britain, because I had not known that. I again, thinking kind of with blinders on, the Great Depression happened here, huge stock market crash, one of the most historic, if not the most historic of all time. And, of course, these financial events are global. They're not insulated. But what was did Britain suffer in the same way that we suffered here? Was to the same extent, would you say? More so even?
Well, it depended upon where you were, but certainly, yes, the London financial markets collapsed along with the New York, the world, literally. As you are very well aware, capital markets are interdependent upon each other, and they were then as well. You may be interested to know that I invested every single pound, every single shilling that I had in shares of the New York Stock Exchange approximately 1 week before the crash.
Oh, no.
It's true. There's a story behind
timing is everything.
And I had poor timing.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But here's the way it went. I had been the Chancellor of the Exchequer for 6 years under the Stanley Baldwin government from 24 until 29, almost 6 years. And suddenly Ramsay MacDonald and his Labour Party won the election that spring. And I was told, of course, my services were no longer required in the cabinet. I got the boot. You get the idea.
Yeah, of course.
But I reasoned that I would be called back into the cabinet. After all, I had held, up to that point in time, 30 years in Parliament, very nearly every single major post in His Majesty's government.
Wow.
And as a result, I believed that my counsel would be sought. Alas, it would be 10 long years.
Wow.
But
Took a while to come back.
That's another page of history. At that time, I rationed that I would go on a trip, and I would take a holiday, if you will. And so what we did, I took my son Randolph with me, and we landed in Canada. And a train was provided to us by Mr. Bernard Baruch, the great Bernard Baruch, a great financial mind.
Sure.
And he was kind enough to lend us a train. And it was very well taken care of. It was victualized beautifully with food and, of course, plenty of champagne.
Right.
And some scotch and cigars, well appointed.
And that was very much high-class living back then, right? If you traveled by coach, by train.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we all the way across Canada. We whistle-stopped through Canada. I had public speaking engagements for which I was handsomely paid. And we got to the coast, and we headed south. And we wound up in California at a place called San Simeon. Do you know who lived at San Simeon?
And Simeon. No.
It was a great place. It was a very large mansion.
It wasn't Theodore Roosevelt.
It was not Theodore
No.
Roosevelt. No. It was he was the. Let's see if you can guess his name. He was the greatest newspaper publisher of his time.
William
Randolph
Hearst.
Hearst. There you are.
Okay.
You've got it.
Hmm.
Well done. And
We've established that I don't know shit about history, so let's continue.
we've established that we dug a piece of history out of the boy's brain. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
So Hearst was known in his day to be anti-British, if you will. So we were surprised that he invited us to stay in his beautiful mansion.
Mm.
So we stayed 3 weeks.
Nice.
And towards the end of the period, I was tapped on the shoulder at a cocktail party. I was chatting up a movie star, one or the other, and he said, Mr. Hearst wants to see you. And I walked into his office. Yes, sir, can I help you? And, yes, Winston. I'd like you to write a series of articles for me. 27 articles precisely. And you can write about anything you want. There will be no oversight from yours truly. Very unusual, because he was a man who wanted to have his fingers in every pie.
Sure.
And I said, well, I'd be happy to do that. And he quoted the figure. He was going to pay me $20,000 to do this. And in that day, it was a fair amount of money.
Sure.
And I told him I'd think about it. I'm just kidding, of course. I agreed, and we were overjoyed when we headed across the United States by train. But did you know what a beautiful country you are living in? Mountains, the plains.
Indeed.
And we crossed the Mississippi, the mighty Mississippi River.
Yeah.
And we headed to the battlefields of your American Civil War.
Mm.
Now, here's something you may not know about me. And I am, in my day, I was a noted authority in the American Civil War. I had studied it at Sandhurst and found it to be just fascinating. Abraham Lincoln and his leadership, the different generals, Grant, Lee, of course. Appreciated studying the battles, and we wound up at that greatest of all American battlefields, Gettysburg.
Mm.
And I remember it was a cold day. It was early October, October 13th, to be precise, of 1929. And I remember walking on a ridgeline and coming to the place where Robert T. Lee had sat astride his beautiful horse Traveler. And I imagined myself in the saddle, looking at Pickett and all his gallant men, charging across that plain, falling like the leaves that were coming down that day. Battlefields are the punctuation marks of history. I shall say it again. Battlefields, punctuation marks of history, and not just any history.
Explain what you mean by that.
Battlefields, you see, battlefields throughout history have marked lines of demarcations. Things change on battlefields. People change when they are on a battlefield, and it could be not just a battlefield with guns and swords and knives and bows and arrows, but battlefields within your everyday battlefields. These are personal battlefields as well, and we all get to a point in our lives occasionally when we must fight a battle. and come through it on the other side. And it is how you stand if you survive. You come out on the other side standing taller, standing straighter, standing stronger. Because you see, countries that falter and surrender never survive, never come back. But those that stand and fight will stand to fight another day. They will survive.
Interesting. And are you saying win or lose, that's the case? If you're on the field and you fight, you're fighting for what you believe in, you're going to emerge, in a sense, victorious either way. That's what I'm hearing.
It's true. Whether you lose the battle or gain ground, whatever the case may be, you will have that experience. I fought on 4 different battlefields. I fought in Afghanistan. I fought in the Sudan, which is Egypt. I fought in the Boer War in South Africa, and I also fought in World War I. After I became First Lord of the Admiralty, a battlefield happened in my life which changed me forever. Gallipoli.
Gallipoli.
I'm familiar with Gallipoli.
Somewhat, but please enlighten me.
I was blamed for Gallipoli, for the failure of Gallipoli. At that time, it was the greatest military disaster in British history. 55 million killed, over 250,000 injured. It was a debacle. But you see, what we wanted to do is open another front. We were bogged down, chewing barbed wire, if you will, in the trenches in Europe. And us Joint Chiefs got together, myself with the Navy, Kitchener with the Army, and we decided that we would open another front, flank the Turks, surprise them. The Dardanelles at a place called Gallipoli. And we had the element of surprise. We bombarded. The Turks left the heights. If we had attacked then, I believe the strategy would have worked. But we waited over a month. The admirals dithered. Kitchener decided not to land his troops. And the First Sea Lord decided to go behind my back and not attack, not push forward. As a result, it was a debacle. They were looking for a scapegoat, and I became that scapegoat. I was stripped of the Admiralty and given oversight over some local judges. That was my reward, or my demotion, if you will. But that wasn't the worst of it.
Did you deserve that?
Well, it was discovered finally in 1919. That was 1915, 4 years later. After an exhaustive look at it, I was exonerated. However, it was hung round my neck like an albatross for the rest of my life.
Was that the worst of it?
That was the worst of it.
That was the worst of it.
But the worst of it were the cards and the letters and the people on the street who would say, "You killed my father, you killed my brother, you killed my baby boy, you killed my daddy." And so what we did, my family and I, and Jack's family, my brother Jack's family, we went to a place called Hoe Farm, just south of London, 40 miles, quiet, dark at night, and beautiful during the daytime, just to decompress, just to get away from it all.
Sure.
And that, I remember it well. It was a beautiful day in May.
Sir Winston, that's an unfathomable number. 55 million is the number.
55,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, 55,000.
55,000 died. Did I say million?
It could very well be me.
I might have.
55,000 is still a lot of people, but I was just trying to wrap my brain, or I thought I heard million.
That would be a real debacle.
one life,
Mm.
one life is a lot on one's conscience. 55,000 lives. I can't even begin to imagine. And I think it's one of the most difficult things that a leader has to cope with. Of course, you have tyrannical madmen, right, who I don't think give a rat's ass about anything. They just kind of care about their grasp for power.
Or even the rest of the rat's anatomy.
Yes, the whole kit and caboodle, if you will.
If you will.
But I think that I often try to put myself in the shoes of others, and that I think is one of the most difficult things for me to imagine, is taking on the burden of that responsibility. How did you feel about that? Well, coming from royalty, ascending to royalty, that's one thing. But being in the position and being the person that makes the decision, how did that affect you?
It taught me. I'm going to go into this voice now, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
I think what happened with Winston at that point in time in his life was the seminal turning point for him. Because just to extend the story a little bit at Hoe Farm,
Yeah.
it's really important. He wanders out onto the veranda, and his sister-in-law is painting. She's got two canvases in front of her. One of them is blank, and the other one she's working on. And he asks, and Churchill at this point had developed what he called his black dog. Some of us, maybe we've heard that in history.
Great Zeppelin song.
Great. Indeed, hey, mama. But indeed it is. And I think that's where it came from. Oh, they're all Brits, aren't they? Those guys. But Churchill, his nurse, Mrs. Everest, would use that phrase as a colloquialism. She would say, "Oh, Winston, black dog nipping at your heels again. Shake it off, boy." And so, he'd get depressed. He'd get down. Well, he had a very large black dog following him. When he asked, "Could I have a go?" Goonie, Gwendolyn was her name, but everybody called her Goonie was her nickname. And she said, "Oh, Winston, what a marvelous idea." So he sat down. He grabbed the very smallest brush, and he dabbed it in the paint, looked at the sky, beautiful cerulean blue, and matched the colors just right, and pulled that brush up. And I made it a dab on the canvas, no bigger than a bean. It was cataleptic. The black dog screaming in my ear, "Winston, how can you possibly paint? Killed all those boys." And as Winston was putting that brush down, quitting painting forever, the neighbor suddenly appeared. He heard a car door slam and footsteps coming up the pathway. And it was the wife of a very famous British painter who lived next door. She said, "Winston, not the smallest brush, the biggest brush." And she grabbed the largest brush, slapped it in the paint, hit the canvas with it, shoved it in Winston's face, and said, "Here, Winston, the canvas does not fight back." I grabbed that brush, and I attacked the canvas with the same perspicacity with which I had heretofore attacked life. And Winston paints for hours and hours, and when he comes to, the black dog is gone.
Wow.
And what he has discovered is his creative side of his being. At that time, you had, psychologists, Freud and all the rest of them, coming up with this idea of the right brain and the left brain.
Sure.
And we know that today. It's common knowledge.
Yeah.
And so Churchill writes a book even about it and attacks painting, just gets completely into it, goes into his right brain and comes up. And while you are in the creative process, the thoughts that come to you are astonishing. And for those of us, and everyone has done it.
Yeah.
And when you get totally immersed and involved in something, thoughts come out of nowhere.
It's
And
true.
he gets the idea to write a book about and he comes up with the philosophy that your left brain is like a machine, and it's constantly running. It's what gets you up at 2:00 in the morning when you're thinking about this or that. And what he said, getting into your right brain is, and he believed it was hand-eye coordination. What did it for him was painting, grabbing that brush, looking at something and creating it on a canvas.
Yeah.
But he posited that, if you were gardening or cooking or playing pool or ping pong or playing golf or whatever, if you were using this hand-eye coordination, sewing, whatever, you were suddenly engaging the right brain, and what that did was it stopped the left brain, allowing it the ability to recharge.
Right. Yeah. Quiets it down.
That quiets
all
it down
that noise
and rejuvenates the left. And it worked for him because in his lifetime,
Yeah.
he painted over 550 oil paintings in his lifetime.
Amazing.
And wrote all of those words and led the government, led the British people and the world, indeed, during World War II. What that experience, that Gallipoli
Yeah.
experience did for him was allowed him to work through a disaster of epic proportions. And the way he decided to do while he was painting
Yeah.
was muster back into the army in his 40s.
Wow.
And he winds up in the trenches in Belgium at a place called Plug Street. And he is put in charge of 144 Scotsmen. Can you imagine the former First Lord of the Admiralty suddenly a major in the army, and he's your commanding officer? Well, at first they didn't quite know what to make of him.
Right.
Because he had brought along his paints and his easels and everything. And of course he was well victualized. He was the guy you wanted to hang out with
Right.
in the trenches because he had the booze and the food and all the rest of it. But he treated his guys wonderfully, and he put himself in danger. He would go out into no man's land, bullets whizzing along, but he believed in his destiny. You see.
You know what really fascinates me about this? It's a true story, the neighbor, coming up, or is that an embellishment? Is that true? Is that does he describe that he was ready to put the paintbrush down and walk away?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And
Helen Lavery was her name.
Helen Lavery,
John Lavery, famous painter, her husband lived next door.
So she strolls up and she's like, no. You don't half-ass it. Like, this is, you do it.
It's a true story.
But so that blows me away, because I've had this thought in my mind for years about, this is one of my creative outlets, but creating a TV show. It could be a great HBO show or maybe a Netflix show. And the idea is forked. This would be the logo.
That's the logo.
But it's really a play on words, right? Because the idea is, in life you have a right path and a left path. You're going to come to many forks in the road in your life. You only get to see one outcome because you have to choose, right? The idea of the show would be you can play with it and follow a character and see both outcomes, right?
Right.
But the interesting thing to me is what if she doesn't come down that path? And what if he does put down the brush? because
And gives up.
right? Because that creative outlet, it's something we all need. We don't all have the luxury to have it, but in the case of Winston, I look back and I say, well, this had a very calming, therapeutic effect on him, and it helped shape his life and it helped shape his decisions. And the amazing thing about Winston Churchill, not being a huge historian, admittedly, but we would be in a much different world today if it were not for that man.
Well, it's very true. He showed us a path. Thing that strikes me about Churchill, and the thing that has kept me studying his life now. This is my 54th year of portraying Churchill, but a lot of study came with that. I had to really internalize him well first, and we can get into that later, how that all happened.
Sure.
But he was indefatigable. He faced a number of different obstacles. He had a horrible lisp as a child, and he worked and worked and worked to overcome it because he wanted to be a great orator, like his father, and like people that he admired. And he used it. You know, when he would say, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." You heard the little bit of a lisp in there. And he would use that as a punctuation. He
was tenacious.
just incorporated the difficulty into his persona and said, "Okay, I've got that. It's not compartmentalized. It's suddenly become a part of me, and it makes me more resilient."
Yeah.
And he understood that about the British people in World War II as well. As long as you tell them the truth and tell it like it is, they will respond, and they will respond tenfold, 100-fold.
So help me with my history. World War I, what was the time frame?
1914 to 1918.
1914 to 1918. So you're a young man at that point. You're in your 30s?
40s.
40s already. And World War II began what year?
World War II began in 1939.
39. Okay.
September the 1st of 1939. Hitler, well, it started before that with Hitler with the Anschluss. The first thing he did was he took part of France back.
This is mine.
Alsace-Lorraine area. He just walked in and took it. Nobody showed up.
Wow.
Churchill yelled, "What are you guys doing?"
Right.
Kick him out of there. And then he took Austria, and then he took just a little bit of Czechoslovakia. He said he was going to take, but of course he took it all.
Right.
And then he attacked Poland. And what started the war, why war was declared when Poland was attacked, was that Britain and France had a treaty with Poland that if you are attacked, we will go to war with you. Of course, both countries were toothless tigers at the time. They didn't have the ability or the perspicacity or the push to go ahead and help Poland. And Poland was, of course, overrun in just a couple of weeks.
What happened between the sun never sets on the British Empire to 1939 that put Britain in that position?
Well, the British people, you think about it, it was 20 years from 1918 to 1938, 39. They had just gone through the war to end all wars. That's what they called it. And who were the people? Who did they fight? They fought the Germans. They couldn't believe that the Germans would do it again. Winston read Mein Kampf. And he saw the roadmap that Hitler had laid out, that the Nazi Party was laying out. And he saw the Nazi Party coming together, and that's why he sounded the warning. But no one seemed interested in listening to him.
Interesting.
And a big part of it was that they were also, at the time, doing business with Germany. Germany went through a winter in the 1920s. While the Roaring Twenties were going great in the United States and the rest of the world, Germany, because there were reparations that were imposed on Germany, was being sucked dry by the rest of the world because they wanted their money back. They wanted to be able to rebuild, and Germany was made to pay reparations. Not as bad as they asked for in the beginning, but it was still pretty tough on them. But they were coming back in the 30s while the rest of the world was in a recession. And people would say, "Oh, Winston, don't worry about the Germans. They're buying our steel, and they're buying our finished products, and they're turning out Volkswagens and tractors." But of course, they were building airplanes. They were in parts of it in different places, and then they'd bring them all together and put them together. And
They were gearing up for war.
and no one seemed interested, least of all the Baldwin Tory government, who glossed over the facts because they didn't want to seem like they were preparing for war. Besides that, it was very expensive to do that, and they were reeling from the results of this horrible depression that was worldwide. And so Churchill, what he did in the 30s, which was brilliant, was that he pulled out all of the stops and invited people to Chartwell, his family home. And this is an important place, and it's an important maxim for business people too. You have to find a place that's your place, that you know you can influence people and have them influence you. And at Chartwell, it was the dinner table where Winston would do it. He would not just get them liquored up. That was ancillary. Everyone was comfortable there, Churchill especially.
Yeah.
And he would pick their brains and find out from them what the facts were, what was going on behind the scenes. And because he had been in government and had held nearly every major post, as I said before, as a result, he had contacts in the government to where suddenly he had facts at his disposal. And he began to stand up in Parliament from the back bench. Before, he was a troublesome gnat, a mosquito in your ear.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the government started asking, where is he getting this information from? And it was uncanny how things began to change.
Right.
But they still didn't invite him back in the cabinet because of Gallipoli. Yeah. And because they looked at him as kind of a loose cannon, if you will, sometimes making irrational decisions and these types of things.
Sure.
But he was certainly right about Germany.
So he saw this ahead. He was the guy that he was looking down the road, and he didn't like the setup. He said, this is not good. There's war brewing. This guy is going to be a problem. He saw it ahead of everyone else, or at least didn't ignore it and was paying attention to it while maybe some other people were burying their heads in the sand.
That's correct. And as a result, he was persona non grata. George Bernard Shaw was heard to say, if you were a friend of Winston Churchill's in the 1930s, you were a party of one. Shaw, just as an example,
Yeah.
Shaw sent him 2 tickets to the opening night of one of his plays with a note that read, "Dear Winston, come to the opening night of my play. Bring a friend if you have one." Churchill wrote back, "Dear Shaw, cannot attend opening night of your wonderful play. Here are your tickets back, but please send 2 tickets to the second night, if there is one."
Love that.
Never lost his sense of humor.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Great wit also.
Oh, and during that
Incredible.
time, Lady Astor, she was a female member of Parliament, the very first female ever elected to Parliament, and she and Winston had a very vitriolic relationship. And she stood one day and said, "Mr. Churchill, if I were your wife, I should put poison in your tea." Churchill rose and said, "My dear Lady Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd have to drink that tea." Another time he met Bessie Braddock. Bessie was this corpulent, labor, tough broad, came barreling down the corridor. Winston had had a few with them. It was late at night. They had been at it all day long. He'd had a couple of drinks. And she bustled up to him. She was a teetotaler. And she said, "Mr. Churchill, you're drunk. What's more, you're disgustingly drunk." "Bessie, you're ugly. What's more, you're disgustingly ugly. Now, Bessie, I may be drunk, but tomorrow morning you shall still be ugly." Never saw the woman again. She'd come my way, she'd go the opposite direction. So
that's hilarious.
So you know, he was really a pariah.
Yeah.
He kept at it. He did not. What did he say? "I never give in." He never did.
Never gave up.
He kept at it. He just kept at it.
That's something that I think is true of the British people. They're very resilient. At least that's the way that they're portrayed. They're not going to give up easily. It seems to almost be ingrained in them. And maybe it comes from generations prior where there's just so much suffering and hardship, and it just kind of went down from one generation to the next. It's one of the things that I admire about them. So tell me, when you're, again, time frame, 39, war starts, Britain goes into Poland. Is that 39, 40?
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a period of time from on the first day of September of 1939, the war begins.
Mm-hmm.
And on the third day of September, Churchill is asked by Neville Chamberlain to take the Admiralty again. Come back into the cabinet. It's been 10 years.
Wow.
And you look back on it and say, only hope this isn't too late.
Right.
Well, Churchill takes over the Admiralty. He's a company man. He knows what he's doing. All of his charts, he had built a false wall at the Admiralty. And he opened the wall, and his maps were still there. The ships were in the same places they were when he left in 1915.
Well, it's a great move on the part of leadership. You know, hearing Winston's story, you know, it's almost like it's his destiny. He was playing with toy soldiers when he was a kid.
He walks into the Admiralty that night. This is a great story. He walks into the Admiralty that night. I mean, he finds out, and he immediately gets in his car to go to the Admiralty. I mean, he's a man, immediacy, you know. And he walks in a lieutenant snaps to, "Sir, First Lord, sir." "At ease, Lieutenant. What's the news?" "Sir, a message has been sent to the fleet." "Message? What message?" "Winston is back, sir." And Churchill said, "Bloody well right. Winston is back."
He said it before Schwarzenegger. I'll be back.
"I'll be back." And so, he jumps in with both feet. They have some success.
Yeah.
However, they call that period of time the Phony War from September until May of 1941. And during that period of time, Norway is captured by the Germans. They try to attack Sweden, and Sweden repels them. The Germans do, and there's lots of things happening at sea, U-boats and this and that. Unfortunately for Neville Chamberlain, a vote of no confidence happens on the 9th of May of 1940. And the opposition party to the Tory party, which Winston was a member of at that time, he went back in 1924 to the Tory party. That's part of the story. He said, it takes an expert to rat, but it takes a real expert to re-rat. and so he's back in the Tory party. And they were in the majority. But they had a vote of no confidence. The people on the opposition voted him out, and there was only one person that the opposition would agree to, and that was Winston.
Wow.
And so they're forced. The Tories are, and there are many Tories who wanted Winston too, the younger ones especially.
Sure.
Great book called Troublesome Young Men about that period of time and how Winston was chosen and the politics of it. And so he is suddenly made prime minister on the 10th of May. That just happens to be the day that Adolf Hitler invades Western Europe.
Wow.
So on his very first day in office, this happens.
Shit hits the fan.
big time. And so over the weekend, this happens on a Friday, and of course the Blitzkrieg, which is lightning war. That's the way it's translated.
Yeah.
So the lightning war begins on the 10th, and on the 13th, which is Monday, Churchill addresses Parliament for the first time. And this is what he said. I shall say to the House, as I have said to those who've gathered here and joined this government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. You ask, what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war on the land, on the sea, and in the air, with all our might, with all the strength that God can give us. To wage war against a monstrous tyranny, never before encountered in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can say it in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there can be no survival. And of course, everyone was underwhelmed by his speech.
Really?
Well, they didn't know quite what to make of Winston. Well, we're going to fight? Really?
Hell yeah.
This guy's taking over the rest of Europe, and we're going to fight him? Okay. Of course, the church...
he was so right about everything.
Hitler forces everyone to the coast, and Churchill organizes the rescue of 337,000 troops when he was told only 10% of that would be rescued. But Operation Dynamo happens. They get them off the beaches. Almost the entire expeditionary force that still survives. They had to leave all of their equipment.
Did Enigma have something to do with that?
Well, Enigma, they captured a submarine.
Yeah.
And they yanked the Enigma machine, and they sunk the submarine. So the Germans thought the submarine was lost, and the British had the Enigma machine, but they had to break the code.
Right.
And they did it at a place called Maynard Keynes is the name of the little town, and they did it in this amazing laboratory.
Is that Sir Alex Turing?
Turing was he created the first computer.
Right.
Right.
Amazing.
And indeed it is. And you can see a replica of it in Mountain View, California. They have a replica, or you can go to England and see the real thing.
Amazing.
And of course they broke the code with that computer thing that's the way they broke it was they finished everyone with Heil Hitler.
Is it The Imitation Game, the name of the movie?
Was The Imitation
Amazing
Game.
movie.
Great
Really,
movie.
for anybody that hasn't seen it or is curious or interested, what a phenomenal job and what an incredible story and piece of history.
That's true. Churchill gathered together the greatest minds and put them in one place. And you can visit. There's a marvelous museum there. Go there someday. If you're in England, it's a very nondescript little town. That's what they wanted it to be. Obviously, they didn't want it invaded.
Yeah.
There's a great story about Churchill he was at a place called Ditchley Park. It was out of the way, went away for the weekend. He was just settling in for the evening when suddenly there was a disturbance outside, and a man was trying to get through the cordon of protection that Churchill had. They almost killed him. But Churchill came outside. He had his slippers and his bathrobe on, and of course he had a cocktail. and he listened to the man, and what the man was saying was that he had the key to breaking what they called the German beam. I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not.
No.
But it was at a time when London was being bombed, and the Germans had developed a radio beam that could go around the curvature of the Earth. Current scientists in Britain and the United States all said that couldn't be done, but those diabolical Germans figured out that they could get a beam to go around the curvature. Then they'd put an x-axis on it, and their bombing became very pinpointy as a result. And they're having fits with this. They couldn't block it. They couldn't jam it. But this man said he had the answer to it. Churchill invited him in. The man drank an entire case of beer. Churchill made him a sandwich. He had never made anything in his life, food-wise. He always had it delivered to him. But he made him a sandwich and listened to him.
Right.
And then sent him off to Maynard Keynes. And within 2 weeks, the German beam was broken.
Wow.
This man was brilliant. And so I have 8 principles of leadership that I put together over the years. Churchill never wrote about leadership; he just did it. And so one of the things I have is encourage a culture of innovation. Find those people in your organization or wherever you can, like I found you and you found me.
Yeah.
Who can innovate, who can bring to your organization or your persona a way to help you grow.
Yeah.
And touring and the rest of them were definitely a part of that.
That's a great card, by the way. So I know that I came back from a conference where you were speaking, which is how we met.
Right.
And one of the people that were there who I also interviewed on the show was Jessica Brooks Woods, who's the head of NABIP. She's a wonderful young leader. And I know that she put out a LinkedIn post specifically about what she took away from the conference and those principles, which is she's someone who I admire as just a rising star. Not that, she's just superb. She's a superb leader.
One of those people.
She's one of those people. And so I think that's a great testimonial just to the simplicity and the elegance of that. It's not all that. Why don't you share with the audience, if you wouldn't mind reading them for us?
Winston Churchill's 8 principles of leadership. First, have a clear vision, which drives all strategies. We talk about vision statements. Different companies have them. When I do consulting with companies, half day, full day type things, I ask, do you have a vision statement? maybe half have something in writing,
Right.
and most of them are very plain vanilla.
Mm.
I think you need to dig deep and figure out what it is your company really needs, and that's the CEO usually, the dreamer, the visionary, if
Sure.
you will. Churchill, of course, his vision was get the Americans involved in the war.
Right. We
No
need
matter
backup.
Yeah,
Right.
Churchill said, I wooed President Roosevelt as a man woos a beautiful woman. And he did. And he got it done eventually. So the second one is organize to overcome opposition. Now, what Churchill did was his war cabinet was made up of those who had naysayed him, those in the past, the worst naysayers, the ones who had really degraded him. And he said, sometimes I felt I chose a bit too wisely, as a result. But he wanted, as he said, I wanted the best men, not the yes men.
Ah, brilliant.
And so find a way to, I think, identify the key opposition to your vision, whatever that is, and organize the living daylights out of overcoming that.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And Churchill is not given enough credit for his organizational abilities. We don't concentrate on that, but you got to think about this. He became war minister. It was a title that had heretofore never been in the government. He looked at World War I and he saw how that was run by committee, if you will. And, right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. He said you needed a central focus. You needed the dreamer. You needed the visionary. He had different departments and different people that he knew could follow through on his vision, running those arenas. And then secondarily, he also put himself in charge of the interface of government with the private sector, because you had unions, you had different things. Yet some unions wanted to go on strike during the middle of the war, holding up the war effort. Churchill was able to put those fires out before, because he was that organized. So there you are. Third, turn details into action. Churchill, with his painterly eye, we talked about his painting. You think about, I want you to all close your eyes for just a moment and visualize a painting of a boat, a little red boat, bobbing out on the water, way far away, and a scene in front of you of a dock, and maybe some other boats that are gray and blue and kind of drab. But that little red boat out bobbing in the bay, it's what draws your eye. And if you concentrate on that little red boat long enough, you will see the painting in a whole different light. You'll see everything as long as you concentrate on that one little detail. And Churchill had a device that he would use with his cabinet. He would have them concentrate on one little dot out in the middle of nowhere if they were trying to solve a big problem.
Sure.
And he
narrow the focus.
He would drive them out of their minds because he would stay on that for hours sometimes.
Wow.
Until they finally got it. And then, boom, it all became...
Came into focus.
All the pieces fell into place and
Yeah.
problem solved.
Wow.
And so finding those details... I think Churchill invented the tweet. He had a sticker, and it was entitled "Action This Day." If you got, and usually it happened in the morning, you got a packet, and you opened it up, and it was from the Prime Minister, and it said "Action This Day." You dropped everything, because number one, he would identify a problem. Secondarily, he might give you some directions as to where to go with this. But thirdly, he'd put a name on it. And then fourth, he'd give you a deadline, and it was usually midnight. You had to solve a problem in a day, or maybe 2 at the most.
Yeah.
And a good example of this was there was one called Utmost Fish. What happened to Churchill in the morning is not unlike what happens to us today. He got dispatch boxes. Are you familiar with dispatch boxes?
No.
Dispatch boxes were different colors, and they were from each department. And he would get these dispatch boxes delivered to his office. It's like getting email
Okay.
every day. Okay,
That I'm familiar with.
And so he got these boxes, and they had correspondence from each of the departments. And of course, his staff would go through them and determine which were the hot items and which were the maybe not so hot items. Well, Churchill liked digging down and reading them all, and he got down to the bottom one day, and he was told, "We have a shortage of fish. People are not getting enough fish," and that's a staple for the British people. And so he drafts a letter to a man by the name of Geoffrey Shakespeare. He was an undersecretary, had nothing to do with fishing, didn't know anything about fishing, but he felt Geoffrey could do the job. So he told Geoffrey, he said, I've found out there's a shortage of fish. Undersecretary will see the Assistant Chief of Naval Staff, and he will see this other person. By the way, I noticed that there were some fishing boats in dry dock down at whatever dock it was. And we will call this Utmost Fish. You will come, you will report to me by midnight with your solution. So Geoffrey dropped everything, put a fishing council together at 6 o'clock that night, came up with the idea of using those fishing boats and also using boats that were in dry dock that were military boats. And he put them to work fishing.
Wow.
And he came to Churchill with his idea right at midnight, and he got yelled at for almost being late. But Churchill listened to him, agreed to do it, and sure enough, within a couple of weeks, the fish really flowed in.
Wow.
And Churchill opened up a series of restaurants called Churchill's Fish and Chips and made a zillion franchised it. Yeah. No, but anyway,
That's a fish story.
So turning details into action. Find little details in your business that that may or even in your personal life that could make a difference. Okay. 4th, communicate from experience using simple words. Of course, this was Churchill's forte. Not only in speaking, we know him. And for instance, the phrase that I use is never have so many owed so much to so few. A famous phrase about the pilots during the Battle of Britain. But you think about that. Never, 2 syllables, have so many, 2 more syllables, owed so much to so few. You know, George Bernard Shaw once said, again, to quote Shaw, he said, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. We all know if you're sitting in front of your computer and you're writing an email and you might be emotional about it.
Sure.
I mean, we get that way occasionally. Some of them we put into a file someplace, we never send them. But if you're writing a very carefully worded thing, you might put it on the side, bring it back, run it through ChatGPT, whatever you're going to do. But you're going to really focus it in, and you'll find out that if you can use the old words, the simple words, they are the ones that work the best. Why? Because they relate to everyone, whether you are a Don at Oxford or you are a dock worker in Liverpool.
True.
And Churchill had the ability with these great speeches, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. I mean, he went back to the Middle Ages for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because he knew his constituents. He knew his audience. He knew they'd respond to those old words. Another thing about Churchill and the way he did business, if it wasn't in writing, it didn't get done. And that's something, you mentioned writing before.
Yeah.
Clear writing. We maybe today tend to gloss things over in the case of expediency. Okay, hey, let's do this, let's do that. No, document it.
Right.
Make sure it's documented. So, not necessarily to blame anybody if things go, bottom up.
Sure.
But you certainly want to be able to maybe go back in time and see chronologically where you've been and maybe replicate the process.
Yeah.
So you get the idea.
Yeah.
So it had to be in writing. The fifth one, we were just talking about encouraging a culture of innovation.
Yep.
The name of the Maynard Keynes place, by the way, was Bletchley Park, was the name of that area where this innovation happened. Churchill called it the geese that laid the golden eggs. And so everyone needs a goose or two or three
Sure.
laying golden eggs for them. And the more the merrier, because you get that synergy going together with people.
Yeah.
And great story.
R&D.
Great story.
Right, yeah.
Churchill was in his bathtub on the Queen Mary. He was heading to the United States, and he had a bar of soap in his bathtub. It was one of those bars that float, like ivory. Or,
Yeah, sure.
I forget which one it was in the day. We were all in the bathtub, and I always thought that was the neatest thing that the bar of soap would float. Well, Churchill had that bar of soap, and he got the idea for D-Day to build floating harbors. And he thought, what if we did this? Of course, it was said that Churchill had 100 ideas a day, and maybe 4 of them were worth a damn. But he put this out to the boys at boys and girls at Bletchley Park. And said, is this possible? His scientists, how do we do this? And they came up with a design where they built concrete piers. There's still one at Normandy today. They floated them. There were 6 of them. They floated them across the English Channel and then sunk them down in pilings. And because the Germans had destroyed the infrastructure.
Wow.
In Normandy.
Yeah.
And they were able to land tanks and half-tracks and trucks and jeeps and troops and everything with these artificial harbors.
Episode of Broken Healthcare Podcast is brought to you by Benefixa Healthcare Consultants. Visit benefixa.com to learn what's possible. Reduce the cost of healthcare for your organization, deliver better outcomes for your people, and yes, design health plans that give your people a path to $0 out-of-pocket costs for healthcare. Visit benefixa.com today. So these concrete piers that were just below the surface of the water?
They floated. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah.
But they floated them across.
I'm fascinated. That's crazy.
They used bars of soap. I don't know what they did, but they floated them across. They figured out how to do maybe even an air bubble underneath it or something.
Right.
And then they released the air bubble.
That's crazy. And with all the U-boats and, stuff, the U-boats were just, what's the word? Insidious.
Oh, they were.
Horrible.
They were.
It was an incredible new weapon that the world had never seen before.
And the tonnage they sunk was just unreal. There's a marvelous movie with Tom Hanks. It's called Greyhound.
I've seen it.
Isn't that a good movie?
Amazing.
It's about the merchant marine.
And the beauty of it wasn't directed by Steven Spielberg, although I think Steven Spielberg might have produced it. But it was masterfully directed because it really gave you the sense of what being on that ship, hunted by the Germans, what that felt like.
Oh, that German captain coming over the radio, he was great.
You wanted to kill that guy.
Oh, man, you did. So going on to the next one, the 6th one, Touch the Troops. Probably my favorite of the bunch. Churchill, many people don't know that Churchill you mentioned the Cabinet War Rooms that you were in.
Yeah.
There's a marvelous museum in London that they kept that museum sealed up the day the war ended. They sealed up the room, and then in the 1960s they opened it up again. And even today, you can still smell the stale cigarette smoke down there. It's incredible. but they've kept it as it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, Churchill would go up to the rooftop of that building when the sirens would sound that the Germans were coming in to bomb London during the Blitz. And he would go there because he wanted to see where the worst of that night's bombing was located. And after the all clear sounded, he'd get into his armored car and he'd go there to touch the troops.
Wow.
Can you imagine your prime minister showing up just in the smoldering ruins?
Yeah.
And there's a marvelous story of Churchill finding a woman buried under the rubble, her hand the only thing visible, and they cleared, as they're clearing the rubble away, it took an hour to get her, unburdened, if you will. And Churchill sat there and held her hand and talked to her and consoled her for over an hour. The woman was apoplectic, and it brings tears to my eyes.
Well, you can't underestimate that. Some of the greatest leaders I've heard speak have said that a big part of what they do is going to, walking around their organization and, just putting a hand on a shoulder and just the human touch. It sounds trivial, but it's so impactful.
It means so much.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And he just understood that intuitively.
And Churchill would wander Whitehall because he had been in government so long. He knew names and faces and departments and names of kids and whatever. And he had good people behind him helping him with that, of course. But
right.
Just showing up and being a part of it. Additionally, Churchill was, when you get, let's go to 100,000 feet and say, okay, what did Churchill do during the war besides be in England? And he was like, where's Waldo? Everyone wanted, where's Churchill? Well, he's visiting with Uncle Joe Stalin. He's visiting the troops in Italy. He's in North Africa. He's in India.
Yeah.
He's in the United States visiting with Roosevelt. He was everywhere.
Yeah.
He traveled, they say, over 100,000 miles via airplane in depressurized, airplanes flying low in difficult times, in dangerous times, being able to get shot down.
Amazing.
They even made a mask for him, to breathe, and the mask you could put a cigar in it. It was incredible. I've seen the mask. I know it exists.
Hilarious.
Yeah. And so he was you think about it, Roosevelt didn't travel well.
Right.
Stalin wouldn't travel well because he was afraid of getting assassinated.
Right.
And so Churchill was the bouncing ball, the glue that held the big three together.
Yeah.
And in the process would touch the troops on the way as he would go. He liked being near the action. There's a great story about him and Patton. He admired George Patton tremendously.
Sure.
Because, pardon me, because Patton
had a reputation for being a hard ass and just a no nonsense guy, right? Yeah.
And he just kept charging. He didn't care about his supply lines. He figured he'd pick supplies up as he went along the way. His guys keep moving, and his thing was take as much ground as you possibly can. Just keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
And so Churchill meets him at the Rhine, and they cross the Rhine, and they both pee in the river together. There's a picture of them doing this, and
a little symbolic there.
Talk about two great leaders peeing in the Rhine. I mean, it's a great. Ooh, I don't know if I want to close my eyes on that one. But you talk about touching the troops.
Right.
So anyway,
I got your Nazi war machine right here.
right there, up your nose with a rubber hose. Okay, number 7, place top talent. Be magnanimous. If there's a quality that I admire the most about Churchill, it's his magnanimity.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you define magnanimity?
I was hoping you would define it for us.
I saw the blank look in your eye, so that's why I asked you the question.
You see, what I
that was
liked,
a mean,
what
that
I
was a
liked-
mean thing.
What I
of me
liked
to do.
before was that you said he used small words to reach people. Now you're using a word like
That's a big
magnanimity.
one.
It's a hard one to say.
It's a big one.
So someone who is very
doesn't hold a grudge.
doesn't hold a grudge. Okay.
That's the way I
Magnanimous.
That's the way I define it. And
Okay.
Now, the example that I use is during the 30s, articles were written about Winston Churchill. We talk today about being canceled. Churchill was really canceled back in the 1930s. Articles came out that were smash pieces on him. He was only allowed to speak on the BBC radio 5 times in 10 years. They blackballed him, and he made a living by writing. And they decided, we're going to keep you from being published.
Sure.
And there was an example of a man that wrote an article about Churchill that was very disparaging. And Churchill was welcome in every club in London. He didn't have a membership there, but they all had reciprocal agreements. And he knew where this individual, where his club was. So Churchill shows up at the club, sits down across from him. The man is reading the newspaper, and he looks up, and there's Winston. And he's afraid he's going to get punched in the nose. And Churchill says to him, "You didn't really mean to say that, did you? Let's have a pint and talk about it." It's a matter of being able to forgive.
Yeah.
And forgive in such a manner that it lets everyone off the hook. And now let's just get down and talk person to person, magnanimous.
It's a beautiful quality.
It's a beautiful quality. And I just don't think there's enough of it in the world today.
Absolutely not.
And when we say place top talent and be magnanimous, the way I look at that is that sometimes we have people in our organizations that get glossed over. They sort of ride over that person. They get passed over for this promotion or this responsibility or that responsibility.
Right.
Be magnanimous about it. If you don't think that person needs to be rewarded, maybe give them some responsibility that can get them reward. But find a way.
Yeah.
Find a way.
Yeah.
Final thing is, remember, nothing inspires like optimistic enthusiasm. Churchill would walk into an environment, walk into a room, and the place would explode with optimism and enthusiasm. He had an energy, a kineticness about him. And that's something that you probably can't teach anybody.
He had it. He had that it factor.
You either got it or you don't.
It was electrifying.
It really was.
Even to this day, if you go back and you listen to some of his oratory, it's just incredibly engaging. It moves you. And that's a gift.
He had a way with the English language. I always say let's go back to the British people that you were talking about before.
Sure.
I believe what he did was he reminded the British people of who they were. He even said that I am giving people something that they don't know they have. And he would just, in his words, evoke that.
He was a unifying force.
He really, truly was.
For sure. Talk to me a little bit about the stronghold. What was it about Normandy Beach that the Germans strategically had to have that beachhead? And what was it about Normandy Beach that the Americans and the Brits said, you can't have it? And just what an incredible story that is in and of itself. My Uncle Ed, who's passed now, he wasn't there on D-Day. He was there the following day.
Yeah.
And he would never talk about it. And he was traumatized by war. You know, he used to wake up, you know, fighting out of a dead sleep. And you could only imagine what those young men experienced.
Right.
But he said the sea was red with blood the day after we stormed Normandy Beach. What was it about that as a as a piece of geography that meant so much?
Well, strategically, it was the logical place to strike. It wasn't Calais, which was heavily fortified. They could have gone, which would have made sense because there was a port there. If they could come in and attack that, they could use the port for their ships and for unloading and loading and the rest of it. They looked at Normandy as being an entry point that was close enough to the coast where they could 35, 40 miles, they could head over, and it looked like a quote-unquote weak spot in the coastline, although it was heavily fortified, as we all know, and became...
and they knew they were going to take mass casualties, right? It was...
Very much so.
And you know, you just shared a story about how the Brits basically floated concrete piers in,
Right.
which I'd never heard about before. You know, I have the visions of Saving Private Ryan with the boats coming and dropping the hatch and guys pouring out and just getting just eviscerated.
I think those piers came in a couple of days later as they were bringing supplies in, those types of things.
I see.
When maybe they had to clear the beach first before they could put the piers in. But
that was a turning point in the war, though, no?
oh, it was.
Yeah.
Normandy was. But I'm going to take you back to Gallipoli and Churchill with not his finest hour.
No.
He was in charge of the Navy. And what happened was Admiral de Robeck was the man's name. And Churchill called him Admiral de Roback, years later. But Admiral de Robeck's ship, a couple of his ships were hit by mines that had been placed by the Turks, and he stopped. And they had destroyed some infrastructure. The Turks did, so it made landing troops difficult. And that wasn't cleared away for a month. Churchill remembered that. And that's why those piers were put in. And Churchill was also very trepidatious about Normandy and D-Day because he'd been through it before.
Sure.
So he wanted to make sure everything was right.
That's what I was going to say. He really got burned. It cost him 10 years of his livelihood, essentially.
That's right.
And, not to mention the mental scarring of all of that loss of life. But you think now, here's that crossroad again. Here's that fork in the road. Do I go right or do I go left? Do we go into the fire? I didn't have such a good experience last time.
It took a lot of paintings and a lot of Johnny Walker to make sure that it happened.
Was Johnny Walker a thing for him?
Oh, yeah.
No kidding?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Back then.
And Johnny Walker Red.
Johnny Walker Red.
A blended scotch, not the expensive stuff, although he would be happy to drink that if it was available.
Right.
But the reason he liked red was because he was a traditionalist. When he was in India, he said the water there was unfit to drink. Therefore, we had to add whiskey to it just to make it palatable.
Palatable.
By some miracle, I learned to like it, he said. So so he'd been through it before.
And so they ultimately, as we know now, they pushed the Germans back. They won the beachhead, and that was a huge turning point in the war. Was that post? What drew the Americans into the war? Was it the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor.
So it wasn't so much that the relationship between Winston and FDR was like, okay, I'm going to come and save the day. The impetus was really the bombing of Pearl Harbor that thrust the Americans into the fight. And at that point, we were all in.
Earlier that year, the Americans, Franklin Roosevelt, developed something called Lend-Lease. Are you familiar with the Lend-Lease program?
Yeah.
And the way that Franklin Roosevelt described it was, if your neighbor's house is burning and you're not just going to give him your hose, you're going to give him your hose and the water that you have flowing as well. And if the hose gets burned up, you're not going to worry about it. You figure he'll pay you back someday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way he got around the law that had been passed in the United States, where you can't help a foreign power militarily. And that started in 1941, and the United States gave, I believe it was 30 old mothballed destroyers, plus that movie Greyhound. To me, one of the keys was that marvelous merchant marine group from the United States and Britain that went back and forth across the ocean and supplied England. Because if they hadn't had that, they would not have survived.
They wouldn't have made it.
They wouldn't have made it, because that was their lifeline. In addition to that, the Americans, through the UK, through England, they would leapfrog and go to Russia, and they were supplying Russia at the time as well, with tanks and those types of things. And that really mushroomed later on. As an aside, Lady Churchill, Clemmy, his wife, went to Russia and started a Red Cross effort in Russia and raised millions of dollars to help Russian people who had been injured in the war. So it was an all-hands-on-deck effort.
Right.
As a result.
It was amazing how structured and organized Hitler was. And if not for the resilience and the victory is the only option mentality,
right,
we could be living in a much different world. But I think when that unification happened, the Nazis bit off more than they could chew. When they lost Normandy Beach, then they decided, I don't know, again, time frame, but they decided that they were going to go into Russia, and they were like, oh, it's fucking cold here.
Well, they went into Russia in 1941.
Yeah.
Operation Barbarossa, it was called. The Blitz lasted from September of 40 really until May of 1941, the heaviest portion of it. It continued, through till the end of the war with the V-1 and the V-2 rockets.
Sure.
And, but the teeth had been pulled out of that effort because the Germans were massing on the border to go into Russia. And at that period of time, the people in Greece were still free, and they were being attacked by the Italians. And as a result, Churchill sent half of his force from North Africa to aid the Greeks. He was roundly criticized for this. Taking half of your force, you're trying to kick Rommel out, and you take half of what, Well, they kicked the Italians and took a bunch of prisoners. However, the Germans, prior to their attack, Operation Barbarossa, they had to send troops to Greece to clean up after the Italians, and they kicked the British out and took over Greece at the time. But it stalled them for 3 weeks. And 3 weeks stalling when the Russian winter comes early made a difference.
So that was a tactical move by Churchill.
Churchill didn't know that was going to happen, but that's how it happened.
That's how it happened.
That's your fork in the road right there.
Yeah.
And Churchill made that decision because he felt he was morally responsible because they had an agreement
Yeah.
with Greece. It didn't work out because the Germans were too powerful.
Right.
But eventually, at the end of the war, as Paul Harvey would say the rest of the story, Churchill went to Greece because they were afraid it was going to fall in communist hands at that time.
And it was a great vacation spot.
Great food. No doubt about it. Oh, yeah. Oopa.
Yeah.
There we go. But he went there, and there were bullets flying, and he got the bishop, the archbishop, or whoever it is of the church there, along with the politicians, to agree to hold free and open elections and to remain a democracy. And so Churchill is credited with almost single-handedly keeping Greece with the West. And Stalin backed off, and that was the end of that. But
iconic.
You talk about the post-war. Visualize a map of Europe. Here the Allies had liberated the western portion of Europe, but the eastern portion of Europe was all red.
Yeah.
And it's because the Russians decided not to go home.
Right.
And so began the Cold War. And that brings us to Fulton, Missouri. Churchill and his Tory party are voted out of office in August of 1945, even before Japan surrenders. He's there with Truman at Potsdam, and then he goes home for the election, and Clement Attlee comes back as prime minister to finish up Potsdam. Churchill is out of the office. His wife came to him the next morning and said, "Winston, perhaps this is a blessing in disguise." Churchill's response, "If this is a blessing, it's very effectively disguised." But again, he doesn't let it get him down. He realizes he is the head of the opposition now.
Yeah.
And he is invited by Harry Truman to give a speech at this little college, Westminster College, in this little town, Fulton, Missouri, and it's something called the Green Lecture. Truman writes at the bottom of a letter from the chancellor of the university, "Please come, it'd be good to see you," that kind of thing. So Churchill develops this speech, which is now called the Iron Curtain speech. He called it the sinews of peace. And he and Harry get on the train in Washington, D.C., and the train begins to chug out of the station. And, of course, the bourbon comes out because, Truman's a big bourbon drinker. And all of his buddies are on the train, and they hand Churchill a glass of bourbon. He takes one sip, and he says, "You Americans know how to ruin good whiskey." So they have to stop the train. A big, burly Marine gets off the train and walks out, comes back with a case of Johnny Walker Red on his shoulder. All is well with the world. And as they're sipping their whiskey and heading out, Truman asks Winston, "Do you know how to play poker?" Churchill, of course, says, "I don't know the first thing about the game." "Fine, get your wallet out. We'll be happy to teach you." Churchill winds up lighter in his wallet, heads off, practices his speech, gives the most eloquent speech ever. The Iron Curtain speech is shot heard around the world. It's how he calls out the Russians, the Soviet Union. And he basically says, if you think you had a problem with the Germans, you've got an even bigger one now with these guys. So they board the train, and they've settled in. Whiskey comes out. Churchill asks, "Gentlemen, do you know how to play bezique?" A rather arcane French card game, similar to canasta. He and his wife loved to play.
Yep.
Of course, no one knows how to play bezique. So Churchill says, "Fine, get your wallets out. I'll be happy to teach you the game."
Right.
So it's just a little story, but these days, for those of you who don't know this, we have a Churchill museum
Mm.
at Fulton, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
And it is what happened in the 1970s was that the college there asked the British government if they could move a church that had been bombed in the Blitz, move it to the campus. And so they take it block by block and move it and rebuild it on the campus. It's a Christopher Wren church from the 1700s, whatever it is. It is an absolutely gorgeous building. And in that church, in the bottom they dig it all out, and they have the most, if you like the cabinet war rooms, it's the same quality, not as big.
Okay.
But it is a marvelous place to visit. Great wine country, right in between St. Louis and Kansas City.
Interesting.
Yeah, right along Highway 40.
I'll have to check that out.
It is a great place for those of you who are traveling,
Yeah.
listening to this. It's a great place to
I'm
go.
such a huge fan. It's really, to say he's an iconic figure in history is almost to do him a disservice. It's beyond one of the greats of our time. And how did you did you stumble into this? Like, where does it come from? And another curiosity of mine is, I don't know if you believe in mediums and folks that communicate with the dead, and there's something called channeling. Have you ever felt like you were channeling Churchill?
When I walk on stage, I believe what I do is I visualize a prism. I stand inside of a prism, and all I have to do is turn the prism to get another look at Churchill. There are so many sides to the man.
Sure.
Painter, father, soldier, son, historian, writer. We've gone through a whole bunch of things here today.
Very deep.
And it is. And where it all began for me was my dad. My dad fought in World War II. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, sure. My uncle.
Yeah. And Dad fought in New Guinea, and pretty tough duty. And, of course, those guys never talked much about it, like your uncle.
Sure.
But when Churchill died in January of 1965, Dad herded us all into the living room. We sat in front of the television and watched the funeral. Remember the wide world of sports years ago?
I do.
Well, they were able to broadcast this thing worldwide. And it's the first time I saw my dad shed tears. And he kept saying he was the greatest man who ever lived. So with that fallow ground for a 12-year-old boy, fast forward to University of Wisconsin, where I went to school. And my British history professor, his name was Dr. Max Schoenfeld. And for those of you who are old enough, he looked like Wally Cox. And Wally Cox, of course, was the voice of Underdog. There's no need to fear. Underdog is here. Remember him?
Very well.
Yeah, right. Well, this guy looked like Wally Cox, but when he opened his mouth, he could do a marvelous Winston Churchill. And he was the most exciting teacher I'd ever experienced. And so being a young acting student, I was able to mimic him precisely doing Winston Churchill. So I was doing Winston Churchill in front of a group of students one day.
Yeah.
Killing it. Okay. And he snuck up behind me. Everybody left, and I realized I have to face the music.
Right.
And as I turned, Max said to me, Mr. Otto, you might have something there. Step into my office. And he became that great mentor that we've all had in our lives. We've all had people who believed in us, like Mrs. Everest and Max Schoenfeld. And he poured Winston into my brain, into my heart, into my soul.
Yeah.
And before he died in the 90s, he said to me, You've been given a great gift. Because if you don't use it, they're going to forget about him. So put the guilt trip on me. My son, Max, I named my oldest son Max after my British history professor, came home from high school after Max passed away.
It's quite the honor.
And really much so. And my license plate reads Winston, of course. And he said, the kids at school want to know if you sell cigarettes or drive cars. And I said, well, what did you tell them? You grew up with this, Max, obviously. You're my great teacher's namesake. He said, I started talking about Winston Churchill, and I realized nobody knew who he was. And after he pulled me up off the ground, those words coming back to me from my great teacher, I contacted Hal Holbrook, the great Mark Twain. Some of you may or may not know that Hal Holbrook was the quintessential one-man show. And his subject matter was Mark Twain. He was brilliant. I had seen him before on stage, and I wanted to learn from the master. And his assistant gave me 4 tickets for my family to see him at Southern Illinois University. He was performing that weekend, and she said, you'll be able to get into the green room and meet him.
Wow.
Which was a great honor. So we, 9 hours down, got a hotel room, and after the show, my family went to the minivan, ordered Domino's pizza delivered in the parking lot, and I got up to the green room. Not an unusual occurrence in our family.
Yep.
And but I remember standing in back of a velvet rope. He came out in his beautiful white suit, mustache, the whole thing. And I remember freezing and saying, what am I going to say to him? When suddenly from across the room I hear, you must be Mr. Churchill, in his Mark Twain voice. I turned and said, do you recall the night that we met, Mr. Twain? I believe it was December the 9th of 1900, Waldorf Astoria Hotel, New York. And I started walking toward him. And the glint in his eye, I'll never forget. We did 25 minutes of the one and only time that Winston Churchill and Mark Twain.
Wow.
It was electrifying.
That's amazing.
He had me go sit down, and he gave me the best advice. The reason I'm telling you this story, he gave me the best advice I have ever gotten. I was at a point in time where I was stuck. I wanted to be perfect. Do you know what I mean? I wanted everything to be perfect in my script. I wanted to write, the magnum opus. And he looked at me and he said, you don't need a script.
Right.
You just prove to me you can do anything with Winston Churchill like I can.
Right.
With Mark Twain. He said, all you need to do is tell the story and string them together with segues. The segues are the key, the bridge between stories to keep things moving along. He said, that's all I do.
Magnificent.
And you'll be doing it long after I'm gone. He wrote me the most beautiful note before he died. He said, now it's your turn.
Wow.
And so armed with that, and there have been so many people, the British Churchill family has been kind enough to endorse me.
Wow.
In my efforts. It's now been, 54 years of doing this. But really seriously about...
Did you say 54 years?
54 years, but since college.
Wow.
I also built a financial services business. By the way, what's your Social Security number, your date of birth?
Everybody's got it anyway.
That's right.
Zero.
That's right. Yeah. What am I talking about? I even know your blood type.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's crazy. But 54 years, and you really feel like you're sitting with Winston Churchill. You really feel like there's not an actor in front of me. I'm talking to the Prime Minister.
Well,
it's just amazing.
Probably the thing that that's grown out of this, and it's
folks, none of this was scripted.
No.
Zero. I don't script a goddamn thing. So what you heard today was me having a conversation with Winston Churchill, and I asked you some pretty obscure random stuff, and you weren't making it up. You know the man. You embody him. It's amazing. But that's what 54 years of tink, 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 tink,
Yeah.
tink, tink,
Just
tink, tink,
a little
tink.
bit at a time.
Right? The artistry is
The funny
not
thing,
lost on me.
the funny thing about this is that when I opened up question and answer at the end of the show to anything anybody wants to ask
Right.
in the audience in character,
Right.
that's when I knew I really had him.
Right.
Just because I'm able to answer those types of questions.
Do you remember the question that I asked when we met?
I don't remember which one.
So I'm a huge Howard Stern fan. I haven't listened in many
Right.
years, but Howard used to play a game on his show called F, Marry, Kill.
Okay.
You could guess what the F standard for.
Right.
But so we would give you 3 names, and then you would have to say, okay, you have to fuck one, you have to marry one, and you have to kill one.
Okay.
Folks, he did not break character. I forget who I said, but it was like, I don't know. I think maybe one of them was Margaret Thatcher.
I think you're right.
Another one might have been Marilyn Monroe.
And then maybe Lady Diana.
And maybe Lady Diana.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. By the way, I was related to Lady Diana, so I can't fuck her.
Let's not do that. Although you are from the South. Now, anyway.
Aren't you my cousin?
So, no. Hell no.
No. But, the most fun I think I have these days with all of this is I've developed this experience entitled Dinner with Winston.
Mm-hmm.
And my dream is always to be at that dinner table in Chartwell.
Yeah.
Just to be a fly on the wall and listen to Churchill. He said, what I like most is good food and conversation with good people about that good food. And afterwards, more good conversation with me as the chief conversationalist. I mean, and I always wanted that. So what I've developed these days, as you're very well aware, is a dinner with Churchill. People can gather around and have dinner with Churchill and find out what he thinks of not only things in the past, but I may be encouraged. I usually don't like to talk about things contemporary.
Yeah.
What would Churchill do about this? That's a little bit against the rules.
Yeah.
In Churchillania. However, ply me with enough champagne, and I might just go ahead and opine.
No, you have, and that's exactly where I had the opportunity to ask you that very question.
That's it.
But it's amazing because it's an intimate setting where, in our case, it was Nelson Griswold that hosted.
Right.
It was at one of his conferences, and I think it
Love
was
Nelson.
supported by Paul Seegert. He might have actually been the sponsor of the event.
He was.
And he's someone in our broker circles that just has had an amazing trajectory. It didn't, Paul laughs about it. He's pretty self-deprecating. It wasn't an overnight success, but he's a huge Churchill fan. And so I think he hosted. And the idea of, really kind of being in the back of a steakhouse with, whatever it was, 6 or 8 tables, maybe 40 people, more or less.
Right.
And have you kind of float from table to table was amazing. And it's if you have the opportunity, folks, if you're a business leader, it'd be a tremendous night. And I'm not being paid to say that.
Right.
It's genuinely the way that I felt. It was incredible. And you're a walking encyclopedia and a historian about not only Churchill but the history of that period, particularly. And so it's just amazing.
And as long as we're flagellating each other, in a good way.
Don't be fresh.
You said to me, I really feel like I'm talking with Winston Churchill. He was very kind to me before, and I will just say this from an interview standpoint. I've done many interviews in my life, and you're right at the top of the heap, my friend. You do a great job.
I appreciate that.
Asking questions and being intuitive, being curious. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, for me, I kind of grew up with my middle brother is 10 years older than me. He's a musician, so he was kind of a night owl. So as a kid growing up, I would watch Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, and later David Letterman and Tom Snyder, The Tomorrow Show. I was up late nights. And I really became a fan of the form. And so later radio and Howard and a number of, Bob Grant was a huge influence.
Yep.
And so for me, it's a labor of love. This is my creative outlet. And I don't know if anyone's listening. Honestly, I don't even track that stuff, but I have fun with it. And I genuinely have a thirst for, I'm naturally curious about people. And what strikes me about folks like you is that you're not a one-dimensional guy. The Churchill thing, you do it immaculately. It's exceptional. And the other piece of your business, the financial services, we haven't really touched on. And I'd love for you to just tell me a little bit about what you do and, what's your day job? If this is your side hustle and you do that pretty well, what happens during other hours of the day?
I'll just say that my financial services clients don't know who the hell's managing their money, me or Winston Churchill. And you don't want Winston. He wasn't good at managing money. I have this right brain, left brain thing as well. You ever take those aptitude tests where, you score 13 this way and 13 that way? I score 0 every time. And so double major in economics and theater in college. And so, I figured, well, I did the study. I know a little bit about this. Maybe I should get into it. And frankly, the acting did that for quite a few years after I got out of school, starving to death. All you have to do is take a look at this face and realize you're going to starve. I'm not a leading man. But
Stop it.
But Churchill was always the constant for me. I said, I'm going to hang on to Churchill. I'll continue to develop that, but I also want to raise my family and take care of my family. And my brother was at Robert W. Baird. He was the guy who, according to him, he ran the preferred department. I don't know if he did or not, but he was a brilliant preferred trader and dealt with the big guys here in New York and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Well, he suggested that I get into the business. He thought I'd be good at it. And so I hooked up with Edward Jones first. They trained me. They did a marvelous job of training. Knocked down the doors, got bitten by the dog, but all the rest. Those were the days where you could knock on doors. And started in a small little town called Lake Mills, Wisconsin. And Jones and I decided that I didn't like, as we say in the parlance, didn't like drinking the Kool-Aid over there, and moved over to a company called A.G. Edwards, which most people in the brokerage world would remember AG. Marvelous. Ben Edwards was a fabulous guy, and another St. Louis firm, my second St. Louis firm. And then A.G. Edwards, of course, sold out to Wachovia. Wachovia was absorbed by Wells Fargo. A bunch of us decided we didn't want to work for a bank, so we moved over to Stiefel Nicholas, another St. Louis firm. So I can give the tour of St. Louis if you need it. I know where all the bars are in St. Louis. But I decided I wanted to be affiliated with a firm that allowed and supported those brokers that could do what they wanted to do. What Stiefel does and what A.G. Edwards did similarly was they just get out of your way. And they say, here's the platform. You can do anything you want.
Just make money.
And we'll pay you well to do that.
Sure.
And, we'll put a
I love that
structure together. And so it's as it is a relationship-built business, period.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as I hear you speaking and knowing the space, I don't know that world intimately, but there's overlap between that and insurance for sure.
sure.
And so I like the idea or the concept of a structure where you're not being directed to push a certain product
Right.
or push a certain service, because that usually spells negative consequences to the client, as opposed to here are the kind of the guardrails, right? I mean, let's face it, any financial services company, any brokerage, any insurance agency, they're there to make money. But there's a difference between having the end all be all goal to be drive revenue versus always do right by the client. And when you do right by the client, then a byproduct of that will be we'll make money and the client will be well served. And that's always something that I've gravitated towards.
Well, and it's always prudent to have a mix of products for a client that matches their needs and wants and desires.
Yeah.
And their risk tolerance and the rest of it. And being in touch with that, to me, is the challenge of this business, and maintaining that and keeping in touch, touching the troops, right?
Yeah.
Follow all of these things, and
Sure.
and make sure that they know that you have their best interest at heart.
How long have you been doing this?
27 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I think 27.
Not as long as the Churchill gig.
Yeah. No, took a while.
What pays better?
These days they're starting to get neck and neck.
Okay.
They are just starting to get there. My Stiefel business, I'm not pounding it as hard as I used to.
Sure.
Good things happen when you do good things for good people.
Right.
Knock on wood. I very little loss of clientele. I moved from Wisconsin to South Carolina, and just said I'm not retiring. I'm just relocating.
Okay.
And we know we can do business from afar because COVID taught that to us.
Right.
And
For sure.
Clients, and I get back to where bulk of the clients are in the Midwest, and I get back to Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan,
Right.
on a regular basis. And I've got them all over the place, as you guys know.
Right.
People move and this and that. So
your approach and your objective is based on, we spoke a little earlier, you're not in this for the quick hit and run. Your idea and kind of what has been mentored in you from a very young age has been, we're going to start here, and down the road is where we're looking, and little by little we're going to do beautiful things, but it's over time. Do I have that right?
It's real funny. I get new clients on a regular basis. I have yet to be asked the question, when are you going to retire? When are you going to? Because I tell them up front,
right,
I'm not retired.
I love that.
Yeah. No, I just said, you've got me for as long as hey, if I was a young guy, I might get hit by a bus.
Right.
Die of a heart attack on the racquetball court. I don't know.
Sure.
But
the plan is not to retire.
I think it's important to get you set up and make sure you're solid. And it's not just your assets that you have with me. I want to know what you got in your 401k. I want to know what your wife's got in her 401k, and I'll help you balance that.
Yeah.
I take an interest in the whole picture. Oh, your kids are interested in investing? Bring them over here, and I'll be happy to sit down and talk with them. You can be here too. You should be,
right?
If you'd like.
And you had that lesson instilled with you. I think it is a good story to share with the audience. So as a kid, you're in grade school, and you went to Catholic school, and you had a nun who was a pretty savvy nun who gave you financial schooling.
Sister Lucetta.
Sister Lucetta.
Sister Lucetta. Sister 7th grade.
Yeah.
Sister Lucetta.
Tell us.
I walked into class one day, and kids were, throwing spitwads, and Kalina had, he was a really big fat kid, and Bobby Latan was shooting spitwads that had little pins in it.
Oh,
And Kalina looked like a porcupine. I'll never forget that day. And then somebody
little rascals.
Yeah. Somebody was pulling pigtails, all kinds of, hijinks
Shenanigans
going on in the room. And Lucetta is at the chalkboard, and she's talking about the stock market.
Crazy.
And I became enamored in what Lucetta was saying. Nobody else didn't seem to be listening, but I found it fascinating, partly because my father had instilled in all of us, don't invest in the stock market. I went through the Depression. Put your money in the bank, get your little bank book, and watch the interest build up. And that's where I thought I was headed. But then she started talking about this taboo subject. It sounded really interesting. And I walked up to her after class, Ray, and I said, I'd like to invest in the stock market. And she took her ruler out and shooed me away. The big, long, 36-incher, made out of solid iron, ironwood.
Spikes.
Bam. And let me see your knuckles. Boom, But anyway, for 2 weeks, I kept it up. I kept asking her, I want to invest in the stock market. Finally, she turned to me one day, and she gave me a piece of paper. She had written the name of her broker down on this piece of paper. She had taken the vow of, no money,
Right.
and poverty, but she had a broker.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me later on that she didn't like the retirement plan for the nuns, and that she wanted her own money.
Right.
But anyway, she gave me this guy's name, and I took the bus. I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I got off downtown on Water Street, and here was Payne, Weber, Jackson, and Curtis, big brokerage firm. And I remember walking into the office, and do you remember Barney Miller, the show? Remember Fish?
Of course.
This
Abe
guy,
Vigoda.
This guy looked like Abe Vigoda. I hadn't made an appointment with him, and here's this kid, this 12-year-old kid, wandering into the office saying he wanted to invest in the stock market. And just like Fish would say, he said, "You got Lucetta as a teacher?" She was my teacher too.
That's great.
And he took the time to help me out. But he did say, before we invest any of your money, and by the way, I had $22.
Wow.
In what I call my weasel sack. It was my paper route money. I dumped it out on his desk, and the pennies and nickels and dimes just bounced around.
Get out of here, kid. You're bothering me. He didn't say that.
He said, no. He said, I got to call your mom and dad. Oh, no, don't do that. Well, fortunately, my dad answered the phone and said, he wants to waste his money. Let him.
Okay.
So he said, well, what are we going to buy? He said, we're going to buy one share of stock. And was called Rite Aid.
Rite Aid.
Rite Aid, the big pharmacy chain.
Wow.
Yeah, and almost as big as Duane Reade.
Sure.
And they had just IPO'd. Not long ago, maybe a year or two. I don't know how many stores they had, 8, 10, 12 stores. And I paid $22 for one share of stock, and I get this beautiful share of stock. If anybody has ever seen a share of stock engraved, and it was beautiful. And I got it in the mail, and a little while later, I got a check in the mail for 5 cents. And my parents laughed. They said, well, it costs more to produce the check than the check's worth. So I took it to Lucetta. And I asked her, what is it? Well, of course, it was a dividend. And she said, we're going to write him a letter. And said, reinvest everything. So we did that. She taught me how to reinvest dividends, capital gains. She became my mentor and got me interested in stock market, financial. And to this day, I'm an equity guy. I'm not a fixed income guy.
Right.
If I want to do fixed income, I'll buy some other type of BDCs or MLPs package to wash out a 1099 or whatever the case may be that pays a little higher interest rate.
Right.
If people need an income stream, guaranteed. So anyway,
what is that? What would that stock be worth today?
Oh,
$22 investment,
that
right?
one share. Oh, that's right. I didn't finish the story. I'm so sorry. So I
Yeah.
still have my one share,
Right.
the original that I have framed, and I take it into classes with me as kids, and I talk to them, and I tell them a story about Lucetta, and I have passed the share of stock around, and I said, now, when I came back from Japan, I went to Japan after I got out of college. Taught English as a second language for Maryknoll, which was a Catholic missionary organization. Came back, and my mother had this file folder full of shares of Rite Aid. It had split, and dividends reinvested, you get extra shares of stock. And I asked Ray before, how much do you think I sold that for? Do you remember what I told you?
I think you said $24,000.
$24,000 on a $22 investment.
Wow.
And kids don't believe me when I show them. But then I show them the brokerage statement, and I said, I had it in a brokerage account by then, but
It's 1,000x return. Not too shabby.
it was really good.
Yeah.
And I sold it at the high before Rite Aid went poof.
Yeah. No, and it's so important that you had that education early. It's so important that we teach our kids about stuff like that. One of the stories that I'll never forget is I worked for Aflac for many years, and I was fortunate. I had a great experience. Had the privilege of managing others. It was a really good organization, and the CEO told the story about his brothers started out selling tractor insurance to farmers, and they were from northern Florida into Georgia, and they did it to raise money for this insurance company, and the farmers invested $11,000 at the time. And so years and years later, farmers who had forgotten that they made the investment found these certificates like under their bed, and they went to cash them in. And that $11,000 turned into millions.
Yeah.
And me being a little bit of a geek when it comes to, I manage my own finances, and I really, it's kind of a big side hustle of mine, as I told you. So there are tools that you can use online now to track stocks and go back in history and say, okay, what would this now be worth if the dividends were reinvested, et cetera.
Right.
So give me a guess. What do you think? And it is a while ago now since I've done this, probably 10 years since I last checked, maybe 5 years. What do you think $11,000 in stock issued in 1955 is worth today, reinvesting the dividends?
Stock in this company with the tractors and
Well, Aflac.
Aflac.
Aflac started out selling tractor insurance.
I gotcha.
And shortly thereafter, they started selling the products that they sell that they're known for today. Yeah.
What would Aflac's been a very good stock? 55. One share of stock, or just
No, it was
what a percentage?
It was $11,000 for.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
It might have been 1,000 shares.
Mm-hmm. So about 11,000 bucks.
Yeah.
What's 11,000 worth today?
Just take a guess.
90 million.
Not a bad guess. So the last time I checked, it was worth about $155 million.
Wow.
One of the best performing stocks, really, of all time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised now if it's 180 or 200 million.
Yeah.
But it just shows kind of the power of investing in the right companies, of course. You can have the unfortunate experience of being Sir Winston Churchill and picking the exact worst time to make an investment and then just have it evaporate.
Yep.
But the reality is, especially I think if you're dollar cost averaging, whether it's monthly or whether it's annually, but you're consistently investing, it's gonna work out for you in the end.
It will.
It typically will.
Especially if maybe there's a dividend kicker in it as well.
That doesn't hurt.
That's right.
So tell us, how can people find you?
Oh, well, it's easy.
Yep.
Just type in Randy Otto, OTTO, and you can either type in Winston Churchill as well.
Okay.
And you'll find me.
Into a Google search.
Into a Google search or AI or
Okay.
whatever your pleasure is, and you'll find me.
Okay.
I'm posted on YouTube. I have representation on a theatrical side, and I also take care of the business side. If I'm doing a keynote for an organization or booking these dinners with Churchill or consulting time, whatever, I do those myself. And so you can just Randy Otto at let's see, it's randyotto@gmail.com.
Okay, that's easy.
No, I'm sorry, Randy as Winston @gmail.com.
Randy as Winston.
Yes, at Gmail. or Randy at churchillspeaker.com. There you go.
Excellent. Well, we'll be sure to put this stuff in the show notes, make it even easier, but that's pretty easy.
All right.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence today, Prime Minister.
It's been my pleasure, my boy. And by the way, not bad for 151 years of age. What do you think, huh?
Better than a sharp stick in the eye, as I like to say.
Indeed it is. It's been a pleasure, and you've been very kind and very intuitive, and I thank you kindly for this time we spent together. It's been energizing.
The pleasure was ours. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you did too, folks. So until next time, love always. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, that's a wrap. Hit like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.